We often speak with my next guest, Terry Barnes, on a range of policy issues that confront governments, both state and federal. I was particularly interested in an article he wrote this morning for the Australian Financial Review with regard to an issue that a great many of us, in fact, at one time or another, all of us will deal with, and that is the price of medicine and a trip to the pharmacy. The article, just to give you a sense, the headline is "The Stalinism on Australia's High Streets" and speaks about the anti-competitive nature of the placement of pharmacies and things to mean we aren't getting the best bang for our buck. Terry Barnes, good afternoon to you.
Hello, Will. Nice to talk to you again.
I really appreciate it. Can you just outline for our listeners what you've identified as a problem in Australia at the moment with regard to pharmacies and how they're administered?
Well, basically, while your pharmacy in the street is a friendly place to go and get your medicine and your healthcare needs, it actually is very big business. And it's a business that's protected by regulation, not just of who can own a pharmacy, which is basically only a registered pharmacist, but also if you want to get your drugs under the pharmaceutical benefits scheme from the government, the pharmacy has to be approved to be at a particular spot. And basically, once you get that approval, it's very hard for competition to set up next to you. So you could be the most inefficient, incompetent pharmacy possible, but a competent competitor cannot get near you, or not for many years at any rate.
So how does that work, and why is there a regulation that controls how the density of pharmacy population in a community?
Well, the idea is that there is a distribution of pharmacies right across the country. And that you don't have pharmacies sort of set up on each other's doorsteps, basically competing for the same business, because the idea is that if you get your medicines under the PBS, that you should be able to get them from wherever you are in Australia. But the problem is that actually protects the incompetent and the inefficient at the expense of consumers, while those pharmacists benefit from having a good line of income and lack of competition. If you're stuck with a poor-performing pharmacy in your local area, you have to go somewhere else to get the care you need. How
far away, according to law, do they have to be? Or if I wanted to set up a competitor pharmacy with the one that's say it's at the end of my street, how close could I put it?
Well, there are a whole range of rules for a whole lot of different situations. But if we're talking about a pharmacy in the street, the basic rule is that it has to be at least 1.5 kilometres from an existing pharmacy.
Mm.
And
it's not a huge distance.
Yeah, it's not a huge distance. Well, it's a mile, more or less, in the old money. But it basically is got to be measured by a straight line from the midpoint of the public access door of each of those premises. So, effectively, if you're 1.501 kilometres away, that's good.
Yeah.
If you're 1.499 kilometres away, that's very bad indeed.
Is your contention then, Terry, that people are suffering is it just quality of service, or is there some capacity to compete on price in this space?
Well, I think there could be a lot more capacity to compete on price if you basically open up competition in the industry, because pharmacy is an industry, it's not just a profession. And but if you're basically able to push away competitors because of the way the rules work, then that basically does entrench a local monopoly. So you can actually charge prices for professional services and for pharmacy, medicines and other products to your heart's content, but you're not necessarily guaranteeing your consumers good service. But with the pharmaceutical benefits scheme itself, there are very strong, rigid rules of how you get remunerated for dispensing medicine if you're a pharmacist. But beyond that, it doesn't encourage quality, it encourages quantity, and it doesn't encourage competition on price or service, especially service.
If we sort of, not looking at the crystal ball, but just to take a hypothetical where we've totally liberalised the pharmaceutical marketplace, I imagine what you would start to see would be pharmacies pop up in your big supermarket chains will be operated by your Coles and Woolies of the world. Would there be much of an issue with that?
Well, personally, I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I've looked at this over many years now. Provided that the pharmacy is managed by a pharmacist who's responsible for the safe and competent dispensing of medicine in that pharmacy, it doesn't really matter who owns it or where it actually is. And I can do a better job at providing services to the public when it comes to pharmacy than you. Why shouldn't I be allowed to set up on your doorstep and actually prove that? I think that is wrong. And in this day and age, we want to actually promote more competition, more quality, more service, not less.
Is that the only aspect of the controls on where a pharmacy can set up and how it operates that you're concerned with, or is that just the primary one?
Well, look, I think that's the primary one. I mean, if we wanted to talk about all the controls, we need more than a couple of minutes before the news, I think. So, there are rules about whether you can where you can have them in shopping malls, where you can have them in private hospitals, medical centres, how many can be in country towns, and so forth. I mean, it goes on and on forever. There's a handbook about 100 pages thick of the rules that you have to wade through. And there's actually a whole industry that's sprung up to broker these pharmacy licences as well, and that actually keeps young up-and-coming pharmacists out of owning the pharmacy in their own right because they can't actually afford to stuff up the capital for it.
Will health ministers have been briefed on this by their departments since your time performing that role? That is, has it been an option for government subsequent to the Howard government when you were working?
Well, it's been an option, I think, for governments since Bob Hawke's time.
Right.
But you've got to bear in mind that while your friendly pharmacist down the road is doing a good job in their own business, they're actually members of an organisation called the Pharmacy Guild of Australia, which is one of the biggest and most powerful lobby organisations in the country. And basically governments of both sides are dead scared of them. As soon as this was floated again last week by the Ian Harper's Competition Policy Review report, they went ballistic. And then basically I don't think any government, federal or state, is likely to take them on this. That's bad policy, but that's the political equation that's being played. But I don't think consumers actually get a good deal from that.
Just as a matter of logistics of something like this, would it be something that would need to be legislated on at a federal level, or could state governments act independently?
Well, state governments actually regulate who owns a pharmacy, and basically that's unlikely to change because of the political heat in it. But the federal government has what they call a community pharmacy agreement with the Pharmacy Guild, which basically is a contract that sets out the terms on which pharmacists are paid for dispensing medicines under the PBS.
Yeah.
So it's not legislation, it's basically a contract. And the government, because it has the money, actually should be setting the terms of that contract a bit more strongly than they have. I mean, the Pharmacy Guild basically has been able to push back over the years and make sure that it keeps its privileges, and that's good for its members, who are the pharmacists who own pharmacies, but for pretty well everybody else, it means that it adds to the cost of the medicines that we're actually getting.
Interesting thoughts, Data. Terry Barnes, really appreciate your time as always.
Pleasure, Will.